My name is Monk Rowe, and we're filming for the Hamilton College Jazz Archive on campus. I'm very pleased to have multi-instrumentalist Art Barron with me today. And I was reading through your resume, trying to find out a name of someone you haven't played with.
I've been a very lucky guy.
Yeah, easier to find out who you haven't.
Yeah.
When you were 17, let's say, did you have those kind of aspirations to just be?
So I was like a senior or junior in high
Yeah.
school. You know, I was having so much fun in music, and when, you know, I did everything I could. Like I was in high school then, and there was a local group of musicians, the Doctors Band, and they met like once every 2 weeks or so. Dentists, lawyers. Some of them had gone out with territory bands, you know, and some of them were great. There was a dentist there that sounded like Marshall Royal on lead alto. He was amazing, Dr. Kolshan. He laid that down, man. And these guys took me in, and I just had the greatest time. I was a rebel, you know. I was like a middle child. And like, I would go to these rehearsals, and they'd have a jam session afterwards, and I got home like at 12 when they said be home at 11. So they took the car away for a week or two. Go out and do it again. I kept just doing it. I think they finally gave up on me. But it was just what I loved doing. You know, when I was a kid, you know, 5th, 6th grade, I was pretty good in most subjects at that time, anyway. But I didn't have that identity, you know, like not sports or this or that. But I went through my first year of playing music, and I almost quit trombone. And second year, all of a sudden, it just took to me. And I just, boom. You know, I was practicing hours a day and loving it. Did everything I could musical. You know, then.
Were you fortunate to have a good teacher in the public school?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of good. I mean, he was like, sorry, Mr. Fink, I'm trying to think of, I mean, he was cool. Yeah, he was great. Yeah. I mean, you know, he was a taskmaster. I'll never forget, he had this little like pencil mustache, looked like, you know, the matinee idol kind of guy, and he's with the pencil and a 1, a 2, 3, 4, and he's like looking at you like this, but it's louder with the pencil. He was really on it. And, oh, well, yeah, he was a taskmaster because you had to have your mother's or father's sign the practice sheet, and if I didn't practice, you know, they wouldn't sign it. No, you know, so it's a long story. I mean, you want to hear that story?
Well, go ahead, because I have my own variation.
Well, so this is 5th grade, and I'm not really serious about it. I have it, and they let, you know, they give you a school instrument. So, you know, sometimes I practice, sometimes I didn't, and I'm trying to get my mother to sign one of those weeks where I didn't practice it. I'm not going to sign this. So I'm going to get in a heap of trouble. Come on, Mom. She said, and this is probably halfway through the year or something. She said, no, you know, you deal with it, you know. So I said, well, then I quit. And she said, you can't quit. And I said, why not? She said, you deprive someone else of having that trombone, so you have to use it the rest of the year, and then at the end of the year, if you want to quit, you quit. So I was like, ah. So I continued on, and I started practicing more and more. And Mr. Fink, the end of the year, they let me take the horn home. I was totally into it by then. And Mr. Fink said something to me, and I went home, and my mother was surprised that I still had the trombone. So when I said I could have it all summer, and you know, I could play it, the music, and I said something, paraphrasing whatever he said to me, and I said, and Mr. Fink said I might be what you call gifted, or something like that. And my mother always said like she would just like had to hold back the tears from laughing, you know, inside. And I still tell that story when she's on one of my gigs, and you know, sitting in the audience, said, it's all your fault. I could have been a lawyer or I'm Jewish. I could have been a doctor. I could have all this money, you know. And so that's how. And then in high school, I just did everything musical. I played a washed-up bass in a jug band. You know, so my ears opened up early, which was great. You know, I wasn't like just jazz, or just one kind of jazz. You know, so I ended up listening to all kinds of stuff and playing in this jug band. We did gigs in the jug band. I remember doing gigs in high school, like with a local society band. One of the better ones, like in New Haven, Connecticut, about half hour from where I live. A guy named Pat Dorn. You know, it's funny. The joke was I always had $30 check in my pocket, which was a lot of money back then, or else I didn't have money. You know, like we're going to a restaurant saying, hey, I only have this $30 check.
Do you remember what the first paying gig you ever had was?
Absolutely. I don't remember the name of the group. It was I wish I could remember the guy's name. Accordion player playing stuff like Aldi La, a drummer, and I remember the faces, a guitar player and myself. Oh, baritone sax player later became a surgeon. Carl Demignani or something. These names will come later, but I mean, so we played at the Sub Alpino Club,
Mhm.
and we each made $15, and we were playing things like Aldi La,
Yeah.
Westminster Cathedral.
Oh, Westminster.
Yeah, I was just sort of guessing at these tunes. I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't know the forms or anything like
Right.
that. Then we went out to a diner afterwards and spent all the money.
Yeah.
You're right. I'm sure you had something.
Right. But you know, $15 for having a good time playing music.
That's why the club owners don't like paying us, because it's the only one of the few gigs in the world where you smile while you're doing it.
Uh-huh. What about that? You and I are the same age, actually. I noticed, and
You're old enough to be my brother.
yeah, there you go. But I remember being turned on to like pop music, like Little Eva and the Locomotion, and that kind of stuff that was on AM radio. Did that stuff make an impression on you?
Try some of the pop stuff I discovered later. It wasn't like I was, against it, and I can't remember what really did. I'm trying to remember what influenced me. Of course, the Beatles were all around. I didn't get the Beatles as much as I did later,
Yeah.
but I don't know that. I'm trying. That's a good question, because I can't quite remember what really turned me on back then. I mean, we listened to as much jazz as we could, but wide open. Like, for instance, we lived in Fairfield, Connecticut. That's where I lived. Who's me? I lived there, and there was a radio station in Baltimore, which I can hardly remember the name now, but they had the Harley Show. This guy made the Harley sandwich shop. He made these big subs and stuff, and he had this great jazz show. And we would get in the summer, the signal, the AM signal skips, so you can get from pretty far distance like that. And I used to get upstairs like 1 in the morning with my little transistor radio. It's the Harley Show, man. I think maybe what they used to be might have been his theme. I can't remember. But I started hearing a lot of Duke. I'll tell you the truth though, I was in jazz mostly. Later on I'll probably remember some other rock stuff. I loved rock even at the beginning. I was never like who rock. I loved it. And originally I loved Stan Kenton. And I said, oh, this is great. And I had a great teacher in New Haven, Connecticut, named Sonny Costanzo. He used to play with Clark Terry's big band. And he was a great teacher. I mean, he was more like a great trombonist. You sat next to him and you learned a lot. He was just amazing, and he pushed me, which was great. And there was a college band there, Quinnipiac College Band. It was called, again, like about 45 minutes from where I lived. So I used to go there. When I was being punished and stuff and didn't have the car, my mother would drive me. And so we would play out, like Clark Terry was a guest once.
Yeah.
A lot of those kind of, Cy Zentner.
Uh-huh.
Wow, yeah, that's right. And Kay Winding. I met all these guys.
And Quinnipiac had a festival every year,
yeah,
didn't
as a
they?
matter of fact, they started having a festival too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was also a jazz club in my hometown of Fairfield, Connecticut. A guy named Bill Ratzenberger. The mouthpiece, Jettone, that was his. And he was a cornet player, kind of like U.B. Braff kind of style stuff, And he'd have all these guys, and he heard me with Quinnipiac. Notice how I'm not even answering that question.
I forget what the question was, but
it was the music that inspired me, yeah. But somewhere I know I was listening to rock and stuff. But anyway, so he heard me play with the Quinnipiac band. He said, hey, Clark Terry's playing next week. Why don't you come and sit in? So he let me sit in with all these guys who would come, and I'd sit in. I'll never forget the first time I was playing, and they had like a great alto player named Ed Graff, who also had a music store. He just sold records and stuff. We used to go downtown Bridgeport to look at records and buy them all the time. And then he actually taught at this high school, Notre Dame Boys, and I used to play in the big band there. And he was in it. Gene Birdmark was a great piano player, great bass player. I can't quite remember his name. Great drummer. And I'd sit in. So I remember the first time, I think it was like Clark and Eddie laid down a background riff for me. You know what that feels like when someone you feel like, wow, this is, I mean, I had it even more blown up in my head. I was like, wow, I've really made it. They played a background riff while I was soloing. And I'm soloing. I have no idea what I'm doing now.
no, but I had the same experience with Clark Terry.
Oh, you have?
He came here and played,
man.
and and I'm thinking, he just comes up with this little riff, and I'm thinking to myself, I could never have thought of that. It's so perfect, and why,
It's funny, man. I'm going to skip forward many years. There was a great sax player named Haywood Henry.
Mhm.
Remember him for Erskine Hawkins?
Yeah,
band? He
baritone.
actually used to sub in Duke's band
Oh.
sometimes when Harry wasn't there. Matter of fact, Haywood told me, like, the first time he ever did it, he went in there, everyone was like, man, where's Harry? What's going to happen? They're all like, this is going to be a drag. And like, and Haywood got on the bandstand, and he started playing, and someone said in the back, he could hear someone say, all right, everything's going to be all right. So what was I telling the story about? I'm losing it now.
Well, I'm.
Oh, the riff. So
The
Haywood,
riff.
Haywood. We used to do a lot of gigs. I have this 8-piece group called the Dukesmen. I don't know if you know about that. I'll get you
Yeah.
a CD and stuff. And sometimes when they couldn't afford the whole 8-piece group, we'd do like a quintet or a sextet. So I had a great front line of Haywood and me and this great trumpet player, Irvin Stokes. Probably like Richard Wines playing piano, guys like Earl Mann, bass, things like that. So it's a great band. We're playing a wedding on a boat. And the people that hired me for weddings, it was like, this is what you're going to get. I never try to fool them to think it was
Right.
like a top 40. And there was people that really wanted it. So 3 of us are up to horn players and we're playing. And someone's taking a solo and we set riffs. So I set a few riffs, and so one time after Haywood heard a few of the riffs I was setting, he always gave me a ride home with his wife, Nell. And Haywood said, boy, and he loved to call me boy. He said, boy, you sound real good, man. And those colored riffs, man, those
No kidding.
you learn those colored riffs good, man. He always loved to say things like that to me that just would make me laugh.
Uh-huh.
He told me some stories he told over and over again because he knew I loved him.
Yeah.
He was amazing, man.
Was there any the feeling of a white boy fitting in with some of these older black men?
I was just so crazy in a way. I was just like, wow. When I got the gig with Ellington, I was a hippie. I weighed probably about 65 pounds more than I do now. My hair was way down here.
Really?
On the bus, I was a mess, I was a hippie. But, they had the white dinner jackets and everything, so I looked fine in the bandstand.
Uh-huh.
Even did a ponytail sometimes.
Yeah.
But they never judged me. If they did, they sure kept it quiet.
Uh-huh.
We were in Ethiopia. We went to Haile Selassie's palace. Yeah, would you edit that, please?
Jeez.
And there were there was Barry Lee Hall. He's a great trumpet player. Barry Lee Hall. He sat at the feet of Cootie Williams and learned how to play plunger. He was totally into Woody Shaw and Freddie.
Yeah.
And Cootie taught him just by being next to him. Anita Hall, who passed, unfortunately, great singer, and Rocky White, drummer. They called us the Mod Squad. And they had to go out and dig up jackets for us to go to the palace.
No kidding. You didn't have that.
Oh
Yeah, you
my
weren't
God.
ready for that.
I'm a lot different now.
Yeah.
I've learned, since I've been booking my band for years and stuff, but I was a hippie.
What did Ellington hire you himself?
Here's what, you remember Jimmy Maxwell, trumpet
Yeah.
player?
Oh yeah, Jimmy. Mm-hmm.
Played with Benny Goodman. I know he played with Mercer, I can't remember it, but he was dear friends with Cootie. They were like one time, right after Duke passed, he came out with the band. There was like this 2-week engagement in Bermuda, and they were fine keeping it going. A lot of Ella was there, Billy Taylor, all kinds of people. So they were fine, and everything worked out. And so Jimmy Maxwell played in some rehearsal bands that I was in, and we got to be really good friends. And he used to say, "Man, you sound more like Tricky Sam Danton than Tricky Sam." And even at that time, I didn't even know how to. He just loved my playing, and I loved playing with him. Played in small groups with him and stuff. So the band, Duke's band, was playing at the Rainbow Grill from I think Monday or Tuesday to Saturday. Sunday nights they didn't play. So but that band was sax section, trumpet, and rhythm section pretty much. They used the same charts, and somehow his music is so heavy that it worked. They know how to play it. Did you ever hear the album The Unknown Sessions?
No.
Oh, find that. It's four horns. It's like alto, it's Harry and Johnny, alto and Barry, Ray Nance and Lawrence Brown. That's a common combination. It's on CD now, I'm pretty sure. And the altos here and the baritones here, it still sounds like a sax section.
Wow.
It's right, in the right tessitura, the right part of the instrument. And so anyway, I keep going on these tangents. So Jimmy, you don't mind, do you?
No, that's why we're here.
I was good at math. So Duke Mercer, who was kind of managing the band at the time, called Jimmy and said, "We need a trombone player for 2 Sundays." Jimmy recommended me. Man, I got the call for that gig. It was like, I remember being, right around then I was at my mom's house with someone else, and I just pulled out a record. I said to my friend, guess who I'm playing with next week? I was like, and I remember calling people, should I bring you? What should I, you know?
Yeah.
And the big advice I got, not from Jimmy, someone else said, make sure you don't sit in someone's seat on the bus. And I go like, well, how do I know? You know, I'm gonna know, man. So I get on the bus and I hear this booming voice, you sit here, boy. That's where I sat forever since then. Walk in, third one on the right, that's my home. Chuck Connors in front of me, Russell Prokop to the right. And so I had those 2 gigs. And I figured, well, that'll be in my resume. I had 2 gigs with Duke Ellington. So on the second one, it was a big outdoor concert in Boston. I forgot where it was, but a woman named Elma Lewis has this whole, you know, I don't know if she's still around, but she had this whole thing for the community all over the place, just kind of, I think it was a free concert, big outdoor thing. So we're setting up and Duke says, you want to come out with us, man? You want to play with us? I'm like, yeah, okay. So just come to my trailer afterwards. He had a trailer afterwards. And I was like, whoa. You know, I thought it was 2 gigs, you know.
Yeah.
And so I'm in the trailer, you know, it's a little bigger than average dressing room trailer, you know, for one. Place is packed with people. Food, caviar, ice cream, all kinds of stuff, drinks, booze, everything. He says, Artie, you know, just have a drink, have some food, I'll be right back with you. Oh, Duke! And he goes to touch this woman, says, blah, 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 talking to him. Then he comes back 20 minutes later and says, so Artie, you want to come out and play with us? Oh, yeah, man, I'd love to. He says, well, let's talk about DJ. Oh, Duke, come here for a minute, please, Duke. When he heard the woman's voice, he had to go, you know, like, it was like that for about 45 minutes. So next time he comes back, he says, Artie, here's my phone number. You know, we won't be able to talk business here, but call me, you know, tomorrow or something. I was like, I was some friends of mine who lived in Boston, you know, I was staying with them. I was like, whoa. I was like blown away. Then I talked to him a day or 2 later, and so I'm on the phone with him. He says, well, how much do you want? Oh, no, actually, we didn't even talk money. He just, he said, well, we're leaving, you know, 10 days from now. Then in a month we're going to Europe, in Africa, about 5 or 6 weeks. I was like, oh.
Oh, good Lord.
This is amazing. And so then when we finally got on the road, he had me into his room and said, well, how much do you want? I'm like, how much do I have to pay?
Yeah. Oh, you mean I get paid too?
Well, that's what we got paid. So it was amazing. And I just, you know, Jimmy Maxwell, my hero. Man.
Well, did you make a weekly salary?
Yeah, it depended. I think
depended on how many
by night.
Uh-huh.
A certain amount. I think it was like something like $75, and this is like 73, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So a full week was what is $450 or something? Is that right? They took the hotel out of it. The hotels were like
Yeah.
$15. Or something,
Okay.
you know? So it was like nothing. The funny thing is, though, the way they paid, Paul Gonsalves probably ended up being the highest paid musician in all of history because his bar bills.
Oh.
We always stayed at hotels that had restaurants and bars, and his bar bills were a legend. You know? And he'd always buy you drinks. I mean, the guys were wonderful. When I first joined the band, I had just started meditating. So for a month, they asked you to like not do anything that you could either get out of a bottle or get arrested for. Right? So, was that a good way to put it? So I was pretty clean when I joined the band, and we were playing at Mr. Kelly's, which is a Chicago club, for a couple of weeks. Then we're going off to Europe to play a sacred concert. The third one I was telling you about in the car. And so I was practicing this little, you know, I'm answering questions you haven't even asked yet. It's good. I'm practicing my recorder, because I wasn't going to hang out at the bar, I realized quick enough there was something better to do. You know. But anyway, so I'm practicing the recorder up there, and his valet, Jim Lowe, comes over and said, hey, old man wants to see him. Bring that little flute. Because he didn't really like the metal flute so much. He wrote a little bit near the end. But he loved the recorder, and he wrote a Lord's Prayer for me. And he kept saying, I'll have it soon. I was the day before the concert, we're practicing, you know, out in England. He says, yeah, I finally got it for you.
Gee.
But anyway, after that, though, I started hanging out at the bar and hanging out with these guys. It was amazing. I mean, so many stories.
Did Duke copy his own music?
He had a copyist.
He's a copyist.
And a copyist had to know his style, because
Yeah.
he might just give you two staff lines for the whole band sometimes. or 3 maybe, you know, and you had to know, like a guy named Tom Whaley that did it for many years. I'm spacing out. Chuck Connors did a little bit, and Joe Benjamin, the bass
So they
player.
actually scored some of his. I mean, he wouldn't write the whole score.
He would, but he had a way to do it.
Oh.
Really compact.
I see.
All the notes were there.
Oh, okay.
As a matter of
And
fact,
they had to
even-
sort them out.
Even one night, Duke gave the 3 trombones one line with all 3 parts, but it was like, you know.
Yeah.
And we sight read it at a concert. And it went okay, you know, some kind of piece. After we met Haile Selassie, it was about the Lion of Judah, or the name of the lion that met us at the airport. This guy was like Melquiades, or something, I can't remember. My friend will remember, and he wrote this. He was writing a song about it. So we got through it, and Duke said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet 3 of the most courageous trombone players you'll ever meet."
You know, Grover Mitchell told me a story about when he was first on the band, and
He
the-
did Duke?
yeah,
Oh, he did Basie. I didn't know.
yeah, he did. And he said the first night was unbelievable, and the second night they were playing some club, and the guys were they started, and half the guys weren't on the stage, and they just wandered up. One guy's eating a steak,
Yeah.
and he just was like, "How does he put up with this kind of thing?"
He had a very low heart rate, and nothing bothered him.
Really?
All right. I only saw him get a little angry once, but it was sort of an act.
Hmm.
When did Grover play with? Grover was a dear friend. I didn't know.
I'd have to look it up.
Was it? It must have been
I
a
think
short one though.
I guess.
During that, I wonder if it was that period in the 50s, in the early 50s, where it was changing a fair amount.
Hmm.
You know, after Tricky Sam died, Lawrence Brown left for a while, and yeah, it might have. I'm going to check it out.
Hmm. Well, you seem to not be have any fear of stepping into any particular musical situation.
Listen, man, I used to go. I remember when I was in high school with those doctors, and they'd go to somewhere to this club and jam. I'd jump on stage, you know, sort of like earn while you learn, or just learn while you learn. I'm learning a tune because you know I play a background or something.
Yeah.
And I remember like a tune would go like, you know, like a tune in B flat, and I go into D in the bridge or something. You know, like okay, I'm just gonna add a lot of sharps and see what happens.
Yeah.
You know?
Uh-huh.
Just came up with that. You know, I'm sure I've stepped all over myself at
Oh.
times. But yeah, I would try anything.
But what's the biggest? Was there a big difference from, you know, going from Duke Ellington to Stevie Wonder, for
Stevie
instance?
Wonder was first.
For to
actually.
be played with
Yeah.
Stevie Wonder before
Yeah.
Duke Ellington.
Yeah, it was.
Wow.
I was in Berklee School of Music, and
Uh-huh.
my 5th semester, everything started not making sense. You know, there were too many rules. I told you I was a rebel.
Yeah.
You walk into some kind of composition class or something. There's like 20 rules. And you can't do this. Can't do this. Can't do this. And it's like, man, you know, this is not for me anymore. You know, like I want to. Music's not about rules. It's about, you know, heart and soul, music, and so I left school. I had played with Stevie a couple of times when he was in town. He'd hire a horn section.
Right.
Had a conductor, Gene Key, great guy, and I remember this guy. He stayed on conducting when I joined the band for a while, and he was like one of these great supporters of me. When I got the gig with Duke and stuff, he was like just thrilled. You know, we stayed in touch for years. So when Stevie wanted to carry the whole thing instead of hiring horns, he liked the horns from Boston, so he came to Boston, and they hired horns. However, I didn't make all the gigs. There was this other trombone player, this young redhead guy named Kenny, and they asked him to do the tour. And I was like, oh man, I want the tour. So I went to the trumpet player who had hired him. I said, look, you know, Milton, I said, man, you know, if you ever need it, man, I'd love to come out, you know. And a couple of days later, he calls me that Kenny's mother wouldn't let him go on the road.
Oh, all right.
Thanks, Mom.
Thanks, Mom. Yeah.
So, and that was like, a year and a half or so.
Mm-hmm.
Went to South America and Europe, and I was so green. You know, talking about interviews, we had this funny thing about Stevie. Stevie was just coming out of, actually let me skip to this first. He was just coming out of the Fingertips, my Sharia Moore, into the new stuff. I'm on the album called Music of My Mind. I don't know that. And that was the first time he produced the whole album. He played everything but except for me, and Buzzy Featon played guitar on it. I have a solo on a thing called Love Having You Around, you know.
Yeah.
Every day I wanna fly my kite. Every day I want get on a camel and ride. So he produced the whole thing. He's playing everything, and it's so funky. It's so great. And there's a part where I have a solo, and of course there's everything but the kitchen sink in there, so it comes in and out of the mix.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, All right, go again. What was- Oh, yeah, so Stevie had a thing that he used to do. Is that what I was talking about?
An interview.
Yeah, when he was interviewed, the drummer and I and the bass player used to hang out a lot. And we said, oh, Stevie's going to Boofland. Like, interviewer would ask him a question like you're doing.
Mhm.
He'd go on a tangent, but he'd go on a tangent, he'd start preaching. So I say, well, I think, hunger in the planet could be, we can stop hunger and we have to change the way the world is governed. After the guy said, where do you buy those clothes or something? We'd say, Stevie's going to Boofland.
I see.
That was the goal. Like, at least here we're trying to keep it in the context of music, but he
Yeah.
would go way out
Yeah.
there, and you never remember what the question
Right.
was. Of course, I should now that I'm doing it.
Yeah, what was our question?
All right, just going to Boofland.
What did you
but-
gain from Berkeley? Anything?
Berkeley was great.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be honest, and this is not a criticism of Berkeley. The best I got was the jam sessions at night and stuff after school and stuff. I played with all kinds. I mean, I played really out to lunch, avant-garde stuff, which I still like a lot of that. If it's like for me, heart and soul, if it's in there, it's great. The form doesn't matter to me so much. I love like what we're doing up here with the Harlem Blues and Jazz Band, but and then the classes I was just starting to write music. I love writing music. I love writing songs and stuff. I had Phil Wilson, the trombone player, play with Woody Herman. Great teacher, great. I mean, he taught great, but he was also probably even more than Sonny, like the kind of guy you stand next to, and
Yeah.
like you learn so much just playing with him. And a couple of people really benefit every year, and he picked on me. He decided that he was going to help me. Before I even knew what this expression meant, like he would yell across the lobby of the school, and he said, "Hey, Art, man, when are you going to start playing with some balls?" And I didn't even know what it meant. I had to say, balls? I don't think I knew. It's silly that I wouldn't. But he was like that, and he always got me. He got me a gig with Buddy Rich for like 2.5 weeks. When one of the guys had to leave before the new guy came in, and it was great. And I had arranging class with him. I had a great arranging teacher named Bob Chestnut, and not a well-known name, but he really was brilliant. There was a guy named Dean Earl there. He used to play piano with Charlie Parker, and he's on Wire recordings with Charlie.
Oh.
So just the environment, but it really got me into writing. I studied composition there. It was really, that was very helpful. It's funny, but Phil has been a dear friend for years. We don't talk for years, and then we'll talk again. And when I got the gig with Duke, his reaction was like, "Son of a bitch, I always wanted that gig, but I'm glad you got it, man.
Yeah.
You're the right cat,
Yeah.
Because he got this bass player on the gig, Paul Pincella was his name in the late 60s, who really could write like Duke, I mean, he had a real sense of that, Not exactly, but, he really studied it. But Duke, that's the school was like that. I mean, when I was in high school, I never thought I couldn't do this. I had no idea how I was going to do it, So I fell into that Stevie Wonder gig, and the funny thing is, I went from one to another, and the cost of living was nothing like it is now.
No.
God, I don't know how people do it now. You got to be certain you're going to make a lot of money when you're out of school. So I went to New York, and the hardest times were when some lean times hit, like, maybe the early 90s or something, where I never did the thing where I did other gigs to figure out how to do it. And I remember once I had a girlfriend, and she was like doing proofreading. And she said, you do proofreading, you do it at night. Because you have to be concerned about someone seeing you do something else. So I thought, I got to do something to get through it. It was a slow period. So it was a 2-part course in proofreading. So I went to take the first part. After that, I got so busy, I never took it. Once I said, okay, universe, I'm going to do whatever I have to make things work.
Yeah. So you've never had any long-term non-music
No,
gigs?
I mean, when I came home from college, I was working at Deli or something.
Yeah.
But I'd quit that after.
Did your parents, they supportive of...
Did they worry, and do they still worry? My father always used to say to me, when are you going to go back to school? When are you going to get a haircut, right? Then I started playing with Duke Ellington. They never really said too much like that.
Okay.
But some years after that, when I was back in New York, I was really into math, and I went as far as calculus in high school. And I really loved it. I loved using that part of my mind. So about 10 years later, I decided to take a class at the New School in calculus again, see if I could do it. It was $100 without credit, 300 for credit. I never got a degree. So I called my father and said, what do you think? Do you think I should go for the credit? And he said, what do you need credit for?
Oh,
He turned around.
he came around. Yeah. Well, your weekly, a week for you, I can imagine every day's like a little different,
It's
right?
totally different, you know. Like I book my own band, so when I
Mhm.
have time to do that, I spend as much as I can. You know, then I'll have, this Tuesday, a friend of mine does a cartoon for kids called The Backyardigans. You know, it's like
No, I haven't heard
on
that.
Nickelodeon. It's a fun. I used to do another one with a friend called Rocco's Modern Life, and I love playing that cartoon. So this guy, so we'll be there probably a good part of the day on Tuesday. Tuesday night I have a rehearsal with a big band for the one I was telling you about before, at this Friends school, the Quaker school, and we're going to do a concert for them on Thursday afternoon. And I can't even think, but there's more stuff coming up. And then I'm going to England late. Oh, the band's going for about 3 days to the Jazz Fest in New Orleans. Then I'm going over as a guest. It's going to be fun at a Duke Ellington conference
Oh.
in England, where there aren't that many alumni left. But Buster Cooper, the great trombone player
Right.
in the '60s, he and I and this great bass player from then, John Lamb. They had John.
You say hi for those guys. I've interviewed those fellows.
Oh, great,
Yeah.
great, man.
Yeah.
Because we did something similar to this in California about 4 years ago. They had probably all the alumni left that they could find, except for Clark couldn't make it. And remember Uhura from Star Trek? Do you know she
Yeah.
sang with Duke?
No,
Nichelle
I
Nichols.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they couldn't find her somehow. But and we did performances, which was
Mhm.
great. And then we also did the oral history stuff. Yeah.
I've heard something about the Ellington Society here that they're very they don't like to hear anything bad about Duke Ellington. They get
You
like
talked to one in New York City?
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I don't. It's funny. I'm not strict about that myself, but I just think I don't even know why it has to come out. Yeah, he probably stole from Billy Strayhorn.
Hmm.
Who knows? You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
mean, it's not a good
Well,
thing that
didn't
it
he
happened.
didn't he sort of listen to what people were playing too and take little pieces of what their
But he-
warm-ups were?
Well, here now I don't know if this actually happened,
Uh-huh.
but check out this possible scenario. Sorry, Duke, where they're playing Rose Room, and Johnny Hodges has an idea for a background like bum ba-dum bum bum, ba-dum dum. I like that. It could have been,
It could have been. Right.
I don't know. I mean, the thing is, beautiful music came out into the world,
Right.
and people got happy. They got elevated.
Right.
The ones that have to research and find out what a scoundrel or the scoundrel aspect of a
Mhm.
person is,
Yeah.
you know,
Is that going to make you feel better to know that?
no,
You know.
and some people thrive on that stuff. It's
Yeah.
okay. I mean, I don't defend it. He was a human being.
Yeah.
I mean, was he brilliant? Was he a genius? Yes.
Mhm.
Did he possibly do something a little offhanded? Could be. Do I care? No.
Yeah, right.
Except when it's a cool story or something.
Uh-huh.
I just don't think it's important, I mean, you can find dirty laundry on everybody,
Mhm.
Even me.
Uh-huh. So you play the conch
Yeah,
shell
yeah.
also.
Not as, dexterous as Steve
Steve,
Turre does.
yeah.
He studies it like crazy. But I have some I've used in dance pieces and
I see.
compositions and stuff.
Mhm.
Or else to do a thing where you just kind of what's the word I'm looking for, when you want to sanctify a space before you do
Hmm.
a deep piece or something, go to the four corners and things like that. I love playing it though, it's nice. I'll see if I can get another copy of it. This woman, a great composer, who she teaches, no, she just retired, I think, at Poughkeepsie at I'm spacing out the girls' school there, the women's school. It's open now. What's the big school in Poughkeepsie? It used to be all women.
Not I don't know.
Anyway, it's a very well-known school. Anyway, she taught there. Wonderful woman from New Zealand. So she wrote a piece for me to play and a percussionist. Scott Robinson's his name, not the sax player.
Oh.
And we brought all our instruments, our conch shells, flutes, whistles, trombones, didgeridoo, and all kinds of stuff. and he played all the percussion and conch. So we started doing some stuff on conch, and the piece was called what is the series? When you add 1 plus 2 is 3, 3 Fibonacci series.
The what series?
The Fibonacci series. It's this natural mathematical series that occurs in nature.
Oh.
And the nautilus, the shell, it increases by, most of them I believe, by the Fibonacci series. So she kind of drew this diagram of going into the shell, I think it was. They got the scope, the width and breadth got bigger, and we're improvising based on this. And it's fun. I mean, you use it. There are a lot of interesting ways to get you into a free improvisation with some guidelines like that. And I'm not saying that we don't pay it mind. I'm not saying that we say, okay, I got to exactly do this, but it's like we ingest the idea, and what comes out, you know. But someone clearly has an idea how you do it, so we played all the way into the center. Oh, it starts big and gets small. That's right. That's what happens. And then we took a break, and then we took it back and back out. And so within there, the two of us were playing conchs together, and they overlap. Like you put your hand in it, it makes it go. It goes flat when you put your hand in. Like that. So we would meet. They were pitched fairly close when we met. The different tones, you know, you hear, you know, like the whoa, 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 were so pronounced in the room. She got this idea, so she wrote this piece, and for, oh God, like 3 percussionists, like 4 didgeridoos, but they play different things at different times. Like 2 of us play trombone at different times, using the natural overtone series, like the A flat in first position, the high A flat, because on a trombone it's flat.
Oh.
So like on a trumpet, if you're playing G concert here and you want to play the octave, which is A on the horn, on trombone you could play it in second, you know, but it's a flat partial. You pull it up to make it like tempered. But on the trumpet, you know, like if you played that note there, it would be flat. That is the natural occurring 7th degree of the scale, you know, lowered 7th degree of the scale. So she wrote with that in mind. It was a great piece. So the piece starts off with this. She knows the pitch of the 2 shells, and she has us do these things where we come together, stay together, pass each other, and come down like that. You know, it does this for a while. It's this incantation. That's another word I was looking for. And it's amazing. It sets up this piece. And there's an oboe player, a contrabass clarinet, and it's called 1,000 Year Dreaming. I might have a few extras.
Wow.
It's a very meditative piece. And we used to do performances, and she'd show slides from the Velasco caves in France, you know, the drawings in there. It was great. I remember one of the first times we did it in New York, we did a run through for a sound check, and it just gets you so high. At the end, she makes the sound of a Amari, you know, from New Zealand. But I can't do it, you know, like some kind of you know, throat thing.
Ululating thing.
Yeah. She would do it at the end of the piece to finish the piece. And it was like, so, as a matter of fact, she did that for me once on the streets in New York. I mean, she's another person. She does these amazing things, and it's totally like, you know, if like, what's Art Baron doing in there? But it's like, she's got such a heart and soul. It's not like, oh, let's do something far out and call it new music. Oh, that's really great sweet music here. And that's what's great about it. You know, that's why I've had this really great career getting to play with. You know, I used to worry, like if someone like that knew me in, like in Harlem Blues and Jazz or something like that, heard me play something avant-garde or something like, oh, what's he doing? And it even happened once. You know, I played with this guy, George Bruntz, he has a big band from Switzerland. We were playing some out stuff, like this piano player I play with, you know, the more mainstream. What's all that about? And I used to play with Oliver Jackson Jr. Do you know him?
Drummer?
He was a drummer, yeah. He was a great friend. And he was cool about all kinds of things. And he worked with George Wein and the Newport All-Stars. Like, he was the road manager, and he's just this great guy. So he was in Europe once, and he had played on the same stage with some group, like, you know, like, what was that, saxophone quartet, you know, with the very modern one, I can't think of the name. You know, the Oliver Lake.
Hamiet
Blewett, yeah. All that, anyway, them or something, or maybe it was Lester Bowie or something like that. You know?
Like the Chicago
exactly,
ACM.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And I love that stuff. And I said, Ollie, man, that's great. You play with those guys. You know, they did 2 sections of a concert. and how they sound. I said, oh man, it was great, man. It's like a fire at the zoo.
That's a good description.
I loved it, man. I mean, I always thought that music, you know, you could be fooled sometimes, but I always felt people that were serious about it and were really making music, or the people that had learned to form and then wanted to be free of it, let's say.
Yeah.
That's one way of playing free music.
Yeah.
You know? It's just sort of coming from a place where you had a discipline to come out, you know.
Uh-huh.
But it was so funny. A fire at the zoo. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, didn't you recently did something with Bruce Springsteen also?
That was another one of these gigs like On the Blue. You know, so you don't sit around thinking, oh man, I wish I had a gig with Bruce Springsteen, because
Yeah.
you know, he has his E Street Band and has regular horns like the guys who are in Conan O'Brien, Mark Pender
Oh.
and La Bamba, the trombone player, Richie. They play with him a lot. Well, some friends of mine had been playing with him for years. On his birthday, they would play his parties, called the Gotham Playboys, and like his Zydeco and stuff like that.
Mhm.
The drummer's a great drummer, could play the rub board and all kinds of beats, named Larry Eagle. So they'd been doing this for years, and then Bruce got called to do some numbers on a CD, you know, to what's the word I'm looking for? You know, just to honor Pete Seeger. So he used that band. He recorded that band, like We Shall Overcome. It was something he recorded a bunch with it. I think We Shall Overcome ended up on the CD. And after recording him, he recorded him again. It was a many-year project, you know. And then he started really getting into the idea of finishing the CD, whether he put it out or not. So when he was finishing it, I mean, everything was live with these people, you know. And then, you know, there's many things happened that I don't know exactly. And then he said, man, I want to put a tuba on here and some penny whistle, because he was doing some Irish stuff too. So they were saying, you guys know a good tuba player for this? And he was getting some names, penny whistle, and the drummer said, wait a minute, I got a friend who plays both. The funny thing is, I'd only played trombone with him, but I think he remembers seeing it on my card, but he said he knew I played them well. So I got the call just to do one recording on top of this wonderful, you know, usually when you know, as a sax player, did you ever do a thing where you're overdubbing on a track? You know, and sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's like, hey, where's the beat, you know, like,
Right.
and plus playing tuba is like a bass thing, so if it's not, you know,
Yeah.
and I really had to hear what the bass player was doing. It was so easy. I'm in the recording studio. They sent a limo to my house in New York, to go to South Jersey, to Rumson, where one of his houses, and he had a recording studio there. So they're doing some stuff, and I'm listening to all this music. They're doing a little editing before I come in. And I'm like sitting there thinking, what is this going to be like? You know, I hadn't met Bruce yet. I don't think so. I think I met the engineer, a really great guy, Toby. And I think, what's this going to be like? So I'm warming up. I have two tubas with me. I have a small E flat, and a bigger B flat, and got all these whistles with me with the different, the different keys. And I'm making sure, I'm a little nervous. You know, it's rare at this point in my life that there's someone where I could be like, oh, I'm playing with so-and-so, like that.
Yeah.
And so it took a while for them to get ready. They keep the limo there. They're paying for and I'm talking about a really nice limo. You walk in, would you like a drink or something? Like stuff like that. And so I'm listening to them do the music. They're doing a little editing. They had to finish. It was all stuff I knew from playing in that jug band.
Oh.
I said, wow, this is going to be great. Even later on, I said, hey, you want to hear the jug too? So he had me come in, and he just wanted the tuba, some spots. And it was funny, like, I like to, I'm a really good reader, and he had not a super hard whistle part, but he has to give me some time to learn it. Often I'll say, give me a few minutes, let me write it down, so take after take, I'll know exactly what the notes are supposed to be instead of trying to remember. But we didn't do it that way. But the whistle stuff went fine, the tuba went fine. He was cool, man. He was great, man. And like in the middle of the session, the phone rings. Says, "Hey, Bruce, it's Patty and his wife. Are you going to pick up the kids at school today?" And he was great. And he shook my hand, and he said, and it's funny, trombone is my major instrument.
Yeah.
So I know when I'm playing well on trombone and when it's being well to tape or to the hard drive. But you don't know 100% sure. We end up using the smaller tuba and a bunch of whistles, and I thought I did okay, but you never know. You never know if someone's been like, okay, it was a mistake. We should not. You never know. Oh, we really loved it. You never know what's happening. So I got a call about 10 days later. Hey, we want to do another session. some
All
other
right.
tunes. So I guess he liked me.
Good, good.
Went down there, and during the session, this other guy was there, George, one of the managers. I think he was there, and he said, or someone told me, he said, we're thinking about maybe doing a couple of gigs with this band. So when I first went in there, they didn't even know if they were going to release this.
Uh-huh.
It became the Seeger Sessions record that came
Was
out.
on television, wasn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah,
Yeah,
I remember
we-
seeing that.
we did a couple
with
of
all
things.
those instruments.
Yeah. Oh, it's great. The people absolutely loved it. And so I ended up on the road with him. Oh my God, private airplanes.
Oh, gee.
You don't even have to go through the airport. You go through this little building
Oh.
on the edge, or a private airport.
Uh-huh.
Maybe a little security at the base of the plane. But his security was tougher than anyone else's.
Hmm.
I could bring a family member on the bus, but I couldn't bring a girlfriend or something.
Oh,
It was that tight.
I see.
Someone that you didn't know from birth was okay. But
Oh.
I thought you did know, but someone else. So we
Wow.
went all over. Great guy. He would arrange stuff in his, he'd figure out an arrangement. Nothing was written down. So we had 6 weeks of rehearsals that were paid well. So if you had a gig, it was during the day too, so we
Mhm.
work at night. And they sent the limo every day to pick us up.
Good Lord.
I got so spoiled. And these airplanes, man, like you go on, it's like, they're so nice and it's just so easy. You have them for a couple of weeks sometimes. If you buy things on the road, you need to schlep them on or off the plane, just leave them there.
No one told you to be careful what seat you sit on in the
No.
airplane, right?
Oh, actually they did.
Did they really?
They did. Front 5. Stay away from those.
No kidding.
Your hands are
Some
great.
things never change,
Boy, you sit here. No,
Boy.
boy, don't sit here.
On the way up,
Never thought about
yeah,
that.
we were talking a little bit about jazz education
Yeah,
and all
yeah.
the students that are doing it nowadays. And
Well, I've really gotten into that a lot. As a
Have
matter of
you?
fact, I've never worked to get the work, but I'm getting ready to do that now. I've got some management people I'm starting to work with, but I told you I started meditating when I started working with Duke, and that was a whole kind of path. I didn't even know it was connected to music, and then I ended up taking all kinds of workshops and visualization, manifestation, yoga, tai chi. David Darling, by any chance, great improviser cellist.
Yeah.
He had a great thing that I used to sit in. I took some classes with him called Music for People, about just teaching groups of people, from a concert violinist to someone who never did music in their life,
Mhm.
to making music together. And it was just brilliant. And he invited me to come to this thing he did. It was in '86, like a week-long thing in the summer, and just hang out and be part of it. And so as I grew in both fields, they started coming together, seeing what was really, how you could help teach someone. The first time I really realized this, a guy's coming to my house for a lesson. And I've been contemplating this. I sat next to Cody Williams for 3 years, and I just, he was a good friend, and how he played ba bo ba da, laid back so far. It's just, and just told so much, and just sound, not a lot of notes, but sound. So I thought about this. How do you give someone the experience of playing with Cody Williams, which you really can't even buy now? This kid walks in the door, and this idea flashes in my head. To have him, he's walking through cheese. Because I was thinking about this thing. There's a resistance, when you play music. If someone, to learn jazz violin, you really have to learn about what it's like to play a horn, because things come too easy. People that can play really well, it's harder to learn the swing. And I think about, like a band, like Ellington's band, they really laid back, but the rhythm section stayed right there. The difference between that and a band that's just dragging. So there's this tension between it. So I would have them walk through cheese. You have to walk. I mean, visualize my apartment is like Swiss cheese. And every movement is like this. I mean, I'm talking about like an hour and a half or an hour 15 minutes like this. And I would teach them a song after they got acclimated to this idea. I said, when you sing back to me, and mind you, I'd never done this before. Sorry about that.
you're making it around, you're making it up as you go along.
And I'll be honest. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not that I don't take credit, but through meditation and stuff like that, things just
Yeah.
come through, and you can't. I think you'll lose it when you say, "Well, isn't it great what I came up with?" But it came through, and I take credit for being the vessel for it.
Yeah.
So, basically, he comes through in the house, and I sing a song called Wanderlust. Do you ever know this? Old blues by Duke. Da do 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 boo do wah ow. Ba boo ba boo ba doo wah. Wah. You know, it's really laid back blues.
Mhm.
I would teach it, you know, like phrase by phrase, and have them sing it. But man, you know, you can't get the sound. Da, 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 like this. I ended up I do this like with groups of 40 people.
Uh-huh.
You know, and other ideas have come. So they'll do that to the point where they can sing that like an old blues guy. And I say, okay, now get the horn. What you know what always happens? They forget they're in cheese. They walk around. No, man, you're in cheese. You're in cheese. You can't walk that fast in cheese. That's why I always let those lessons be longer, because it takes a long time. And they do the same thing, sing the thing and play it on the horn. And then we move to after all that goes, we move to the piano and sing it. And I'll play the chords, sing it, play it, and then improvise. Usually when they start improvising, they go back to just how they sounded before, but a little better.
Little
And as
better,
things go
wow.
on- I mean, the first two sound like some old black guy doing this blues. And you can see in their faces, they're blown away. So, I mean, early on, it's been 20 years probably since that started. I saw there was a way to really find ways to get their sound out, you know. Like I sang in the car, the bubba da yabba da da yabba. You can learn that, you know, you can,
Yeah.
in your computer, you can, and there's nothing wrong with learning, make it your language. But finding your inner voice, man. And so it's really been a blessing and a gift to me. Like I go in a room, and I've been doing a lot of stuff at Lincoln Center, not the jazz at Lincoln Center, but they have visitor services where like
Yeah.
a big band will come from Chicago, like they did a few weeks ago, and they'll tour Lincoln Center, then have a workshop with me, and their concert band have a workshop with someone else. And there's all kinds of wild techniques. I mean, you think that's wild, you see some other ones. And it's just about getting them to get a sound. I remember one time I was UVA, University of Virginia, Commonwealth, Virginia. Doug Richards, a great teacher down there, he had me there for a week. And there was this lead trumpet player, had one of these, Nick, had a most beautiful sound. But there was nothing inside the sound, you know, it was like, it was just beautiful, you know, physically he learned how to do it. And just ideas would come to me, like just movement ideas and stuff, leaning his stomach against my hand and all kinds of stuff. So a couple of times he hit a note that was him. And you could feel it in the room, and it was like, wow. And that the sound just like, it just blew up, you know, it's just like, and I mean, I'm not freaking out, but I'm going like, wow, it took me a long time to really believe. Sort of like, you remember the Music Man, the Think system,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's really similar to that. I mean, it's an internal thing, because you can't sit next to Cody Williams for 6-7 nights a week for a year now. You know, you can't, you know, so I feel really blessed.
Yeah,
having
you
this
got on the
stuff. So
tail end of that.
I love going around doing this. I
Yeah.
mean, when I did that one with Chicago, I mean, the kids, you know, first of all, like the teachers always say, well, you know, I always ask them what they want to do. And they say, well, we'd like to work on precision and things like that. One time in a band from Australia, the precision was mind-boggling. And afterwards I said, you know, he said, well, we need to work on precision a little bit.
Really?
I said, would you mind if I go in a little different direction? Because generally when I work with a big band, within 10 minutes, the stands are away, the music's away, we do stuff out in a room with movement and sound. But the first thing I like to do is like, I'll have the band, you know, the leader will have them play a couple pieces so I can hear some of the soloists, hear how they play together. And so I'll say, okay, man, you guys sound good. And they do, you know, they work hard and they're a little nervous, but you know, they work hard. So I say, now I want you to play the song again, but no matter what I do, keep playing. You know, if it makes you laugh, try not to laugh, just keep playing. So they start playing, and I'll go around, I'll grab the lead alto player's music and throw it on the floor. I'll do that with a few other players and stuff, and just like sort of turn the music around. And they're like, humming. So then we'll do it for a while, then we stop. And I said, well, what was that experience like? Because people, they're married to music. People,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah,
So I say,
yeah.
I hold up the paper. I say, what was like this? I say, see this paper? All these black dots and you know, lines. You know, what was invented first, music or paper? Because you you know how many students in the
especially the
world.
drummers who are like,
Oh,
you know,
God.
they can't get out of their head out of the paper. And
Yeah, and I
like,
say, man, don't play any of the licks with the horns. Just give me
Yeah.
time. Please, why do they write the licks? in
really,
there?
I
Oh.
know.
And like, talk about
I'm trying to
it.
remember who else said that I
Oh.
interviewed. They said that about
you,
the
get
Basie band, that's why they swung so much, because the drummers didn't have to nail everything.
Yeah, and if you nail something, great.
Yeah.
You know, like sometimes,
Right.
you know, like, but you know, it's like, you know, that's, now, you might have a great drummer that does that, but don't try to synthesize that, put it on the drum part and say every drummer has to do that now.
Right.
When you know
Right.
it, when you've played it for 2 years without music, then,
Right.
then you got it. So,
Right.
they realize it's many, many years, that, I mean, so as man existed, they were making music, I'm sure.
Mhm.
I was telling, you know, the K-band, they were making rock music, man. And so they start getting it. We do all these things, and like, they start just really, you know, and sometimes I'll like set up, oh, this last one was so beautiful. Just where they happen to be in the room, I set up like a tenor, a bari, maybe 2 tenors, a bari, and a trombone over here. Got them to this little group, something like that. And then I'd give trumpets here, this, and make it all go together. Then I'd have a soloist, and I took this lead alto player, this young girl, and I'd put her on a chair. I said, can you stand up on this chair? And she's blowing like this. It's really great. And those guys setting up that basic rhythm stuff,
Uh-huh.
they're starting to do steps, you know.
Oh.
And this is all in there, because they had no idea
Right.
what it was going to be. And they're feeling the groove, you know. And it's like, and yeah, sometimes I don't even have the drums play, but I did this time, and it's like afterwards, you know, it's been so intimate. When you got your eye on that paper, man, it's not very
Yeah.
intimate.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like classical music, forget it. You know, I've actually a friend, you know Ray Anderson, right? Used to
Mhm.
trombone, but he teaches out at a state university in Stony Brook. And once in a while, I go sub for him when he's on the road or something. And he's a dear friend. His daughter's my goddaughter. We've been buddies forever. And phenomenal player, man. I don't know if you've heard his stuff, man. But so anyway, he's got a graduate group of classical musicians, 2 pianists, I think a bassoon player, a flute player, and maybe percussion. Just learning improvisation, not necessarily jazz, but just a group improvisation, you know. And they are so stuck on the paper.
Mm-hmm.
But they opened up. They were so beautiful, you know. He has his techniques. Like they told me the first thing he had them do was like, play as ugly as you can, real loud and ugly, you know. Go guess what you think you should be.
Yeah.
He's great. And so I would do my stuff with them, you know, get them to, you know, just really breathe and make a sound, and sometimes goes crazy. I remember working with an 8th grade piano student who was so married to the music. This is many years ago in a high school in New Jersey. And I couldn't get her at first to like just play without the music, without going to something she had memorized or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this idea, and this was actually before the cheese, I think. And I said, come on, let's sit on the floor. We sat on the floor with the piano behind us. So you just
Oh.
put one hand up there and just
Oh.
hit one note and act like you've never heard a piano in your life. See if you can be like a baby hearing the first note. Bing! And after a half hour of that, I mean, she just started opening up.
That's cool.
Whether they're going to be an improviser or not, but
Yeah,
just have
right,
the idea.
right, that's right.
Music is not paper.
Yeah.
Paper is not music.
Yeah.
You know what the old guys used to say to me? This is a guide. And I thought, oh, these old guys are talking some trash. I don't know what they really mean. This is a guide. And I finally got it one day, you know, like years later playing with Duke or something, when I had most of the book memorized that we played.
Mm-hmm.
It's a guide. The guys in the band, they're playing. I remember when I first got in the band, like I'm looking at this, they're playing that rhythm wrong.
Yeah, right.
That's off of 4. They're practically on 1. I should tell them.
Don't do that.
I don't think
no,
I should
no,
tell
I
him.
don't think I'm going to
should.
tell
And
Cody.
I realized, man, things develop, you know. That off of 4, you wanted to hang a little longer.
Yeah.
Start, you know.
Yeah.
So I realized it's a guide.
Uh-huh.
You know, now today's arrangers would say, you know, they come and see the band a year later.
Yeah.
Fellas, that's off of 4.
Yeah.
And Duke's music was like this. Other than the staff and the notes, that was it.
Hmm.
No forte,
Yeah.
piano, you know, sforzano, boom, boom. Once in a while a phrase mark. Once in a while, you know, F
Wow.
or something like that. But it was because it was a guide. All of a sudden I got it. Here's a man had an idea how I'm going to put some notes together to play this song. You know, and now, you know, arrangers think they're gods.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
it's like, don't even ask them if they meant that.
Mhm.
even if it's a mistake in the copy or something. No, don't ask
Right.
me. I meant that. Nope, that's what it is. I was like, oh God.
Wow.
And even when kids are learning to arrange, I tell them, I said, look, live the music, dance with it, hold the paper in your hand, dance around. Like I haven't gotten the computer software yet, but I know I don't want to write this way. But, I want to write with the score in my hand.
Yeah.
What does it feel like?
I know.
It's like Roswell. Is this real? Is this, it's, like, and then put it in the computer. Then,
Right,
but it's
right.
like, it's about life. It's about
Yeah.
air. It's about, the other thing, they said the horn is an extension of yourself. I'm like 16 hearing that, yeah, whatever you say, oh man, give me another beer or something. I mean, I wasn't like that,
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
it didn't make any sense to me. But it was a seed, because years later, I started seeing my playing change. And all of a sudden, I don't really play jazz. I just make my sound and play music.
Mm-hmm.
If someone wants to say this is what he's doing, that's okay. But it's like, I've had that horn since I was in high school, senior year of high school.
Mhm.
Pick it up, it's like, her name is Bessie. How you doing, Bessie? There she is. I always keep my eye on her. It's like, my hand fits in there.
Mm-hmm.
It's like another arm. It's
Yeah.
like another part of me that can speak. And these old guys did it. That's how they lived. Yeah, certainly there were guys, but the guys that could play. Now Paul Gonsalves could do that.
Mm.
He loved playing ballads.
Mm-hmm.
He was. I haven't given you a chance to ask questions in a while.
No, this has been great.
Still.
But you know what? We're going to have to do part 2 sometime down
Okay,
the road,
cool.
because
Is it
we're
time?
going to have to get over to our
I'll
engagement.
tell you a real quick thing about
All right.
Paul. At the end of the dance, they're tearing the band down, and he's going around the tables playing a ballad, like Ramona. I don't even remember how that goes. And he just loved playing ballads. He was just a beautiful soul. He could play all that crazy stuff and swing real hard.
Mhm.
And those notes, playing. He used to play guitar,
Oh.
first, but his stuff he loved playing ballads. And he just had such a heart. Listen to his solos. Think about it. There aren't many guys that can play those kind of notes, all that stuff. It's just coming out of his heart.
Mm.
But a lot of people from that era, they did though. In that era, it wasn't just about playing a lot of notes. It was
Yeah.
like, if you played a lot of notes, you better have feeling behind them.
Mm-hmm.
So then when you synthesize that and bring it to the schools, this is no criticism of the schools because it's not easy. I mean, I feel like I'm very fortunate that I've had these ideas. There's something else other than just synthesizing those elements. There's something a lot deeper.
Right.
Why music exists to begin with.
Phew. That was a really very interesting outlook, and I appreciate your time today,
Thanks.
because I
I
wish I
appreciate
could bottle some of that stuff that
Well, that's
you
what I'm
haven't.
trying to figure out. How to do.
Yeah, right.
Like I say, there's a certain current, the way things are going on in
Mhm.
the world. You don't stand on a hill and say, wait a minute, you're all wrong. Because there's
Yeah.
momentum from the last
Right.
20, 30 years going
Yeah.
a certain way. You just try to do what you can instead of looking at something as opposition or something.
Yeah.
Just go and see what you can make right. Just my idea of it, based on all those older cats that
Right.
were my mentors. And just
Right.
there's a beauty in the music, and it's not just about winning the cutting contest. It's about, like Tony Joseph's parents that were there. These guys were like musical parents
Mm-hmm.
when I was in high school. There they are last night at the concert.
Yeah.
And they know it, and they're just, it's their life.
Yeah.
She says, my back is bad, and then I listen to music, I forget all about it.
Right.
The joke we say is like, guys in the audience, he says, my wife left me, my kids hate me, my dog bit me, and I lost my job. But this concert, man, you guys just made me feel so good.
All right. Well said.
Yeah,
Thank you for
man.
your time.
Really nice talking.